Welcome, EMF grant applicants, to our instructional grant video. We decided to make an instructional video to try and reduce or eliminate information gap that often occurs between funders and organizations. We want this to be a completely transparent process, and we want you to have as much ease with the process as possible. So we decided to show you exactly what we want and tell you exactly what we want in this video. So the written grant is 10 sections, and although it contains most of the same information that I'm sure you have written out before, it is presented in a slightly different format based on a nonprofit evaluation system that I've been working on for really the last 3 years. It's my personal donor information guide that I have adapted to a grant application format. So it might look a little long and a little overwhelming, but it's really not. It's really all the same info that you normally do. I am going to be looking at my notes to make sure that I don't miss anything. Okay, so it is a long grant. So if you can't answer everything, please just leave it blank or say, I don't know. The goal of this grant is not to give perfect answers. The goal is to really get a clear and honest assessment of where you are in your organizational development. Our goal is to figure out how we can best partner together with you either now or in the future to help you get to where you're going and accomplish your mission in the best possible way. That's one of the reasons why we allow unrestricted funding, because you are the one who really knows how best to allocate your money, not us. So that all being said, we do encourage you to be brief. If you can answer a question in 10 words, don't write 50 words. If you can answer it in 1 word, go for that. Beyond the written application section, we do have a couple additional requirements that you will learn more about in the instructional video. Of course, you're going to be asked to submit all the regular accompanying documents, your determination letter, financials, etc. In addition, we want to do a video interview with you at some point. Come down and ask you a few questions on camera. And we would like you to upload, could be new or old, any kind of video of the program that you're running. The goal with the videos is just to show our members and give them a visual about what you're really doing. So what is this video? This video is a basic PowerPoint presentation with me giving voiceover instructions as you go along. Now keep in mind, not every single question on the grant has an accompanying slide to it. If we didn't include a slide, we assume that you can answer that question without much clarification. Those are just usually yes or no type questions. Beyond that, please don't hesitate to ask us questions if you have them and reach out to us. We are super excited to start this process. This being our first grant cycle, we are anticipating that there will be some challenges and a few obstacles, but we're hoping for a smooth ride. And we appreciate and value your interest and can't wait to get started. Okay, thanks. Bye. Okay, even though this is the beginning of the video, I am doing this voiceover at the end of making this video, because I have a couple of clarifying things to say. This instructional video turned out to be rather long. It's over an hour long, which for many of you is going to seem like an extraordinary waste of time and a lot of time. So I want you all to realize that not every organization is at the same developmental phase, and many of you who are seasoned grant writers are going to find some of this information quite redundant and quite a waste of time. That being said, some of you are going to love the clarification and the lengthy explanations that are found in this video. So my advice is to watch what you need and disregard the rest. That being said, I strongly suggest looking at Section 2 and Section 8. Our requirements for the logic model and for the budget templates are very specific, and I would like you to watch those and get some clarification. All of the questions we ask in this grant are intentional and very deliberate in our thinking of the information that we want from you. We are definitely a bit outside of the traditional funding box. And those of you that are professional grant writers that are writing this grant are probably going to find that annoying. So I apologize to that, but we do have a method to our madness. That is also why I want to give you a full 2 months to complete this application, so you can go through this video and the application at relative leisure. So, that all being said, I guess my only advice in going forward is to watch what you want and not watch anything that you find to be a waste of time or redundant. Obviously, this process will refine as we go along, and we absolutely appreciate your interest in taking the time to go down this road with us for our first funding cycle. So happy grant writing and happy watching. Okay, as I mentioned in the intro, a completed grant application is the written portions, 2 attachments, which is a logic model and an organizational budget and project budget. We have included templates for these things, as well as your supplemental materials, which is income statement and balance sheet for the last 2 fiscal years, a current operating budget, and a 501c3 determination letter. Additionally, we will schedule an interview with you, and we would like you to upload a video of your program, either through YouTube or email a link directly to us. Thank you. Okay, so some of these things are mentioned on the previous slide as well. We apologize, there will be some redundancy in this presentation. I suggest that you answer the grant and do the template attachments directly in Word and Excel. That way it's easier for you to edit. You can add rows, you can take stuff out. So that's what I would do. You can submit all of your documents either as Word or Excel. You can create a PDFs or put them all in a zip drive, whatever you would like. So we did mention that we would like you to be brief. So unless otherwise indicated, there is a 200-word limit for all narratives. Some of the big questions we give you 250-word limits. Oh, I apologize if you heard that ding. If you can't answer something, leave it blank, as I mentioned before. That does not apply to the logic model. Everyone has to complete a logic model, but we have included a template and we will walk you through it. Otherwise, I can't think of any other direct instructions that aren't listed on this slide already. So please email us if you have questions and we will help you. Okay, welcome to Section 1, Organizational Information. This is all super basic stuff. Basically, we just want to know who to talk to if there's a question, and we would like to know your mission statement. Please put that here, and a little bit about your organizational history. And that's it. On to Section 2, your proposal. So we've taken a screenshot of the section for each section. So we will also, the following slides will go into this section in depth and explain to you how to answer these questions. But we just want to give you a brief overview to begin with. If a question does not have a specific slide, we assume that you can answer that, so just answer it to the best of your ability. So I forgot to mention that in the beginning of most of these slides, we're going to have a goal written out, and that's the goal for us, and hope it is there to help you clarify how you want to answer the questions and to show you what we are looking for in asking that question. So this slide is about what are you seeking funding for. We want you to check the box which is most appropriate to you. We have 6 boxes, one of which is unrestricted. And the meaning behind unrestricted funding is that we feel you know better than we do on how to allocate your money. The stipulation with that is that you have to identify either an organizational or a programmatic need for which you need funding. If you choose unrestricted funding, that's fabulous, but you will have to justify why and give us multiple potential possibilities on how you want to spend the money to address solving your identified need. In addition to that, we have your standard basic program funding, which is cost directly associated with your program. We have a capacity building option, which is really an investment in any new resource, be it people, technology, trainings, facilities, that will help you to better serve your constituents and improve your program as well as your organizational capacities. Our general funding request is for anything that is an indirect cost, and our scholarship option is to give program participants the opportunity to participate that otherwise couldn't pay for it if your program is a fee-based program. We understand that scholarships are hugely in demand with most nonprofits that we talk to, so we wanted to make that a unique category. And finally, performance grants, and this can be anything to do with a performance, including ticket subsidies to take your program participants to see a professional performance, or to put on a performance of your own. We just wanted to take a minute to clarify the difference between program and operating budgets. Seems that a lot of nonprofits have questions about this, and to clarify what we specifically mean. So a program budget is we consider to be all costs directly associated with operating your program, plus any indirect cost that you allocate to running your program. For example, a lot of executive directors allocate part of their salary to the program costs. So this is different than your total organizational operating budget. This is your whole entire operating budget and includes all program costs, all indirect admin costs that is not allocated to programs, and plus any development costs and any other costs that you incur. So the program budget and the total operational budget are different budgets, and they should have different numbers. With this question, we're just trying to get a very specific answer as to what you're going to use the funding for. For unrestricted funding, you have to identify a need for which you need funding, and then give us at least 1 or 2 possibilities for how you want to spend that money. You will have flexibility in how you spend the money if you receive this funding, but we at least need to know what you're thinking at this point. Otherwise, if you're getting a grant for one of our other choices, just try and be as specific as possible and let us know what you want to spend the money on. Thanks. So for this question, we're just trying to get an idea of how many people this grant will directly affect. So for scholarships, and you can tell us how many scholarships the funding will cover. For program, how many participants in one program this scholarship will cover. So for example, if you want supplies, but the supplies will only cover one section of your program, then only identify the participants in that one section of your program. And then for performances, how many tickets will this buy, or how many kids will be in the performance? Just try and be as specific and as you can in identifying how many people will directly be affected by the funding. So this question is about how you increase equitable access to music, because obviously that's our primary interest since that is our mission. We're going to leave it up to you for you to define what you consider to be an underserved population group, and You tell us how you increase access to that particular group. If you have any kind of demographic data, please include that, or you can write it in the grant, and just let us know how you're increasing equitable access. So we would like to know how this funding is going to help you accomplish your mission. Be as specific as possible. You can see the couple examples written on the slide. If this is for unrestricted funding, you want to say something along the lines of, this funding will help us meet our organizational need of X, which helps us accomplish our mission by. Yes, you will be asked to fill out a logic model for which we are supplying you with a template. What is a logic model? A logic model is a concise and visual representation that traces what your need is and the resources that you have to undergo certain activities resulting in specified outcomes and a final goal, which in this case is mission accomplishment. You must keep in mind two things. One, you will be tracing initially whatever the societal need or problem is that your organization and program addresses. Two, and this might be more important, you will be addressing your specific funding request, meaning that the activities, resources, and outcomes that you identify must reflect the funding need that you identify. Here is the logic model example, the screenshot of it, for which we will now go through column by column in the following slides with the example that's given. So the first column is, what is your need? You are going to need to identify at least two needs. The first need is the societal problem that your organization addresses. And in our example, this is, we fill the gap in arts education left by school funding cuts. That's your societal need that your program addresses. Secondly, you need to identify the need that this funding request is addressing. In our example, the need is, we need to increase our contributions. That need we've highlighted and bolded, which we would like you to do too. Bold your funding request need. If this is for an unrestricted funding request, you still must identify your stated need for which you are requesting funding. It could be programmatic, it could be organizational, it can be whatever you decide, but you need to identify it. Your flexibility will come when you decide in what activities and or resources you will allocate the funding to. Next, you identify your goals, and your goals are, what are you trying to achieve? So in keeping with the societal need example, your stated goal in relation to that is provide equitable access to arts education. In regard to the funding request example, our stated goal is cover general operating costs with our contributions. Again, if this is for unrestricted funding, your goal should be directly related to the need that you have identified previously. So next we are going to discuss your resources, which you currently have available to you and what you need. So in our example, our need is, we need to increase our contributions. And first we're going to list all the resources we have to currently meet that need, which we have listed: development director, donor tracking system, and a grant writer. So currently our development director is half-time, our donor tracking system is a standard database, and we don't have a grant writer. The need, and this is what we want, is one full-time development director. We want a donor tracking software system, and we want a contract grant writer. We would like you to highlight the need for which this funding request is directly addressing. So in this example, the donor tracking system is what you would like us to pay for, so that's highlighted. If this is an unrestricted funding request, we ask that you highlight a couple of potential possibilities of resource needs that you would like this grant to pay for. Next, we are on to your activities, which is what you plan to do. If this is any other grant besides a program grant, you will need to list 2 activities, one related to your societal need or problem that you are addressing, and one directly related to your specific funding request. If this is a program grant, we assume that your program activity is addressing your societal need or problem, so you may only need to list one activity in this case. In our example, our societal need activity is to hold after-school art classes for elementary school kids, and our activity that directly relates to our funding request is to identify all lapse donors and reach out to them. Now we are going to look at your outputs, which are things that you can count and see, and they are the results of your activities. In our example, the output related to our stated societal need that we are addressing is that 50 students will attend art classes per week. The output that's directly related to our funding request is that 15 lapse donors will receive personalized communications every month. Now we are going to look at your outcomes, which are changes in behavior and or decision making. Outcomes are considered to be short to midterm objectives in accomplishing your goals. So in our example, our outcome related to our societal need or problem being addressed is the underserved students get art education. The outcome related to our specific funding need is that individual donor retention increases 20% over 2 years. So the change in behavior is that donors have decided to continue donating year after year. Yay, we've reached the last column of the logic model. In most logic models, this column is labeled impact. I have changed that name to mission and goal accomplishment for several reasons. I don't like using the term impact, mostly because I don't believe one organization can affect societal impact. I don't think that's possible. So we are going with mission and goal accomplishment. So if you recall, in our example, our stated societal goal that we were addressing was to provide equitable access to arts education. And so our mission is our mission accomplishment, is that all elementary school kids get access to arts education. In related to our specific funding request, our goal was to cover general operating costs with contributions. And our goal accomplishment is then contributions cover general operating costs. So as you can see, the mission accomplishment and goal accomplishment column is directly related to the goal column, which is the second column in your logic model. Whew, okay, that was a lot. You probably may still have questions on how to fill out your logic model, and we will be happy to work with you individually. So please reach out to us if you would like to. Okay, welcome to section 3, governance. The goal of this section is to find out what role your board plays in your organization. Are they a passive board? Are they an active board? Do they fundraise? Are they hindering your development? So we are going to cover several questions related to your board in this section. Okay, on the question regarding what's the primary role and function of your board, we are looking for specific details here. Is the role purely figurehead? Do they actually engage in activities? Do they provide any programmatic input? How do they engage governing policy? How do they write governing policy? What's the primary role and function of your board? Please be as specific and encompassing as you can be. Again, this question is just seeking further clarification on what your board actually does. If you have any written out board job descriptions, that would be great. You can attach those if you want to, or you can just paraphrase them um, directly into the grant. And identify if you have the difference between officers' responsibilities and just directors' responsibilities. Again, this is just further clarification on how your board operates. We're looking to see what your recruitment strategies are. We realize that some of you may have limited recruitment strategies because of the size and scope of your organizations, but just give us any information that you do have. Okay, your board challenges. We know that 90% of organizations face some board challenges in one capacity or another. What we're looking for is an honest assessment on how your board can really better serve you and what challenges you do face. Our goal is to help you have as functional an organization as possible, and we want to help you to see how your board can function better. So please be honest. Moving right along to section 4, leadership. So many times leadership and governance can get confused, and people assume that the board is the leaders and that the board president is the leader. This is often not the case. The board is responsible for making sure the organization is compliant, whereas the leader is responsible for setting a vision and unifying an organization around that vision. So oftentimes leaders can be the executive director or senior member of the staff. We are interested in discovering who your organization's true leader is and what qualities make that person your leader. So the next few slides are intended to give us an idea about how strong your leadership is. First one's on sustainability. So please define and describe what sustainability means to your organization. And note that sustainability goes beyond finances. It's board recruitment, it's program participation, it's funding, it's donor participation. Next slide is on transition plan. Do you have a transition plan? Is it written out? Has it been voted on by the board? Do you still have a founder in place? And if you do, what is that person's role? If you have a transition plan that you would like to attach, feel free to do so. The final slide is in regard to what your ultimate vision for your organization is. What would you do with unlimited funding? Obviously, a good leader has a vision, and we would like to see what your vision is. Thanks. So poor leadership can be a huge challenge for organizations, and we would like you to be honest and tell us what your leadership challenges are. And again, we are looking to see challenges in every section that we ask, because we're looking for ways to better partner with you and looking to see how we can be more effective funders and help you achieve your mission. And we know that leadership is a major issue for most organizations, so please be honest with your response. Okay, welcome to Section 5. The goal of Section 5, management, is to assess your capacity to manage your organization, your capacity to fulfill your mission. So first we're going to look at volunteers and understand how you manage your volunteers. What are their responsibilities? How dependent on your volunteers are you? Can you function without volunteers? Now we're going to look at development. What is your fundraising capabilities? Do you have a development staff? Do they use donor tracking software? Next, we're going to look at communication. What's your communication strategy? Are you on social media? Do you do snail mail? What's the most effective communication strategy that you use? And finally, we're going to look at resources. Please list all of your resources that you use to accomplish your mission. That includes funding, board, facilities, volunteers, equipment, supplies, etc. Anything that you use to fulfill your mission and undergo your program activities. Okay, capacity. The goal of this question is to get an idea of where you are operating at. So, I am going to clarify our definitions of capacity, and then you are going to tell us where you are operating at. So, if you are under capacity, that means you're currently supplying less programs than you have demand for, meaning that there's low program capability but high demand. The demand is there, but you can't meet the demand because you lack the resources. If you're over capacity, you're currently supplying more programming than what you have demand for. It means you have high program capability but low demand for the program. So you have the resources, but the demand isn't there. For example, you have the teachers but lack the students. Again, we're just looking for an honest assessment of your managerial challenges and where you think they can be improved. Okay, welcome to Section 6, Development. The goal is to discover how you fund your operating costs in general. Okay, we want to clarify what we mean by indirect costs. As you know, in the nonprofit world, there's a strong push to make your program costs look very high and your admin costs look very low. As a result, sometimes there are very strange cost allocations that occur. We are all for allocating some of your indirect costs to program costs if it's appropriate. And if you choose to do so, you will have to justify this by explaining to us what your indirect cost allocation method actually is. So once you figure that out and get your program costs straight and your indirect costs straight, we would like to know what percentage of your total budget are indirect costs. And please note that we don't have a target percentage here. We don't believe that there is a right or wrong answer here. We believe the percentages change based on every organization and what every organization's individual needs are. Okay, now we want to look at your restricted versus unrestricted funding. How much of your funding is unrestricted, and how do you allocate your unrestricted funding? Identify your strongest revenue streams and growth rates. If anything has changed, please let us know, and which revenue stream changed, and was it one-time growth or continuous? So, as most every ED will tell you, they wish their board did more fundraising. Chances are you're dealing with this problem too. So, I want to know very specifically, what is your board's role in fundraising, if any? If they do fundraise, please explain what their strategies are and how they go about doing it. Do you have a give-get policy? Here we're just looking for an overview of your fundraising strategies. What's your most effective strategy? How do you generally raise money? Is it mostly events, grants, individual donations? Just tell us what your main strategies are. Given that we know funding indirect costs is a challenge for any organization, because most grants only want to fund program costs, we would like to know how you fund your indirect costs. Does this come from grants, individual donors? How do you allocate funding? And do you have a contingency plan if you can't fund all your indirect costs? Even the biggest and best organizations have development challenges, and I'm willing to bet that you do too. So please, again, be honest and tell us what your primary development challenges are. Is it a disengaged board, hard getting grants, poor event performance? Let us know. Woohoo! Section 7, Program. The idea is to find out what need or problem you're addressing. Okay, program goals and objectives. Please keep in mind, if this is a program request and you did fill out the logic model, then you do not need to fill out this question and you can skip it and move ahead. If this grant request is for any other funding besides program, then we would like you to answer this question as it relates to your program. So, your program goals are your overarching results that you hope to achieve from your program. And your program objectives are the milestones that you achieve on your way to accomplishing the goal. So in our example, if career development is your goal, your objective would be to train 20 students by June. Or if your goal is music education, then an objective could be have 30 students in music class in this summer. So as I'm sure you're aware of, different programs have very different ways in which they track participation in their programs. And what we're looking for is what the intensity of your program is. So we want to know on average, or as specifically as you can get, how many hours the average participant spends in your program. Please pardon the dog barking. So do they come once? Do they stay in your program for years? Or is it weekly, monthly, summer camp? Do they come over and over again? If getting an average is too hard to do, give us some examples of what past participants have done if it varies to such a wide degree. Direct benefits. Yay, this is where you get to show off. Just tell us, what are the direct benefits that your program participants gain? So as much as we'd all like to believe that our program is the best and that of course people want to be in it, that's generally not necessarily the case. Getting program participants can sometimes be really hard. So we want to know how you know that there is demand for your program. How has it been demonstrated by the community? How do you recruit program participants? Are they referred? Do they come from schools? Do you have to actively recruit for them? Just let us know how you recruit for your program. So, as we all know, the benefits of what we do in our programs generally goes way beyond our actual programs, and there's positive externalities, and we want to know what the positive externalities are. How does your program benefit either your community and neighborhood, society in general, humanity? Just let us know what the indirect benefits of your program and organization are. Here we are to the $1 million question. What is the need or problem being addressed by your organization and your program? Basically, why do you do what you do? Do you have evidence that there is a need or a problem? How do you know it exists? And how do you know that you're helping people? Program challenges, what are they? How can your program be better? How can it better serve the needs of the people? Okay, welcome to Section 8, Finances. This is usually regarded as the most tedious and least fun aspect of the whole grant application, but arguably the most important. So we have included a program/performance budget template, as well as a total operational budget template. Keep in mind that these are templates and you are welcome to change them. Add cells, change categories, add rows to make them an accurate reflection of what your budgets look like. Also keep in mind that these are budgets for the future, for the year in which you are applying for this grant. So it's most likely the next fiscal year. In addition to that, we would like your current operating budget and your current program budget, including year-to-date actuals on those budgets. And in addition to that, we would like your past 2 fiscal years financials, including an income statement and a balance sheet if you have that. We realize that many of you operate on a cash basis and not accrual, and therefore you might not have a balance sheet. If you don't, that's fine, just indicate that. Keep in mind that we are not looking for perfect finances. We're looking for honest finances. So just put an accurate depiction of where you are. First, we're going to go over the program performance budget. So please note, if your funding request is for general operating funds or capacity building, you do not need to fill out this budget template, and you can move on to the total operational organization budget template. If this budget request is for a program funding request, but the request is only applying to one section of your programs or one of your programs, please only write a budget that's specific to that program. So for example, if you run both after-school programs and summer programs, and this funding request is specifically for summer programs, only include your summer program budget. That means only the income and the costs associated with your summer program. If this is a performance funding request, only fill out the budget based on the performance. That means the income and costs associated with the specific performance for which you are requesting funding. If this is an unrestricted funding request, we ask that you fill out your standard program budget and include everything in all of your programs. When it comes time for the reporting, you will specify what you decided to spend your funding on. But just in case you decide to allocate the grant request to program, we want to see your whole program budget. Okay, I just want to reiterate who needs to be filling out this budget template, the program performance budget template. If this funding request is for program, performance, or unrestricted, you need to be filling out this template. If your funding request is for unrestricted, you need to fill out your entire program budget. If this request is a program funding request, please only fill out the budget in regard to the specific program for which you are requesting funding. If this is a performance funding request, please only fill out the budget in regard to the performance for which you are requesting funding. Okay, so in our example that we have laid out for you, in our grants category of funding, we have $20,000 budgeted for this program. This grant request is for $4,000, which we have noted. That leaves an additional $16,000 for which you need grant funding. And as you can see, we have divided those out into 3 theoretical grants, 2 of which are secured, 1 of which is pending. Further down the line, we have $50,000 budgeted for this specific program in individual donations, which is pending, and the source are individual donors. Beyond that, we have sponsorships budgeted for $5,000, $2,500 of which is coming from the theoretical XYZ Corporation, and $2,500 which is coming from the ZYX Corporation, which is secured in our example. The other income category is to be identified if you have an additional income category. Please identify it and then fill out what your budgeted amount for it is, what's its source, and what's its status. Now we're going to talk about the expenses portion of the program performance budget. So I listed basic broad categories in this template. Chances are you will probably have additional categories that are not listed in this template. You can make this template look how you want it and have it reflect your program budget or your performance budget, whatever you're requesting funding for. If this is a grant for anything that is not performance or a program, you will not have any request filled out in this section. Because we are using the example of scholarship funding, the request is included. It's a $4,000 grant for scholarship funding in this example. So as you can see, we have $20,000 budgeted, and then in the this request column is $4,000. Keeping with the example that's listed here, $50,000 for salaries and wages and $15,000 for supplies. And we made up that this program or performance cost $100,000 total. Other than that, oh yes, other expenses. Of course, you can itemize them out. If your funding request is for a category that is not included in this budget, you have to identify what that is and include that is as your funding request item. Other than that, your other category can be either an other category if it's less than $10,000. If it's more than $10,000, we ask that you itemize those items out and fill in the budget as need be. So for example, if you have additional expenses that are, let's say, costumes, instruments, and marketing, and those three expenses are under $10,000, then you can leave that category as other and just write in whatever those three expenses equal. But if, on the other hand, those three expenses are over $10,000, then we ask that you add cells, identify each of those categories and what you have budgeted for them individually. I just have one other thing to note on the program performance budget template for expenses. Please remember that you can include indirect costs in your program budget. You just have to give an explanation, which is later in the grant, as to why you chose to allocate those indirect costs to program and what your methodology was. Okay, now we're going to talk about the total operating budget template. Every grant request must fill this out, everybody. Unrestricted funding requests do not need to identify what category their request is for, because when you do the reporting, you will tell us exactly what you spent your unrestricted funding on. General operating or capacity funding requests do need to identify what category their requests are for. Your program costs include your total program budget. This includes anything that you took from the program performance budget that you already filled out, plus any additional program and or performance costs that you are budgeting for. So just to reiterate, your program costs are your total program costs, including all aspects of your program. Okay, so now we are going to look at the total operating budget template in the income section. So as you will see in this theoretical example that we are continuing with, we have included the program budget numbers into this total operating budget example, because your total operating budget includes all of your program costs plus any additional costs that you have. So that's the difference, is your operating budget is everything that you do, every cost that you have, every income that you generate. Whereas your program budget is only costs and income directly related to your program. So in our example, you can see that you have budgeted for $50,000 in membership fees, and that is pending, and the source of that will be members. And if you go down to grants, we have $30,000 budgeted for this budget, for total operating budgets, but the request is still only for $4,000. It's the same request that you had before. So we use the same three foundations, XX, ZZ, and YY, and the same examples from the program budget, but we added an additional $10,000 from the AA Foundation, which you will see is secured. So when you add all of those up, you will see that it's $30,000 to reach your total budget. Going back down the list, we have $75,000 budgeted for individual donations for your total operating budget. Included in that is the $50,000 from the program budget. And you can see that we have this as a pending status as well. So just to clarify, your program budget that you have previously filled out is included within this total operational budget. But the budgets will have different numbers because in your operating budget, you will have additional income sources and additional expenditures that were not included in your program budget. Okay, this is the expenses portion of your total operating budget template. I set this up to reflect how most nonprofits set up their budgets, except I put the program expense at the bottom. So in your program expense, we have it as a total line item. This includes all of your program expenses. So for example, if this is a program budget request and the program template you filled out only expressed or only reflected one program that you offer, the one specific program for which you are requesting funding, you're going to take that number plus all of your other budgeted program costs. So this number on your total operating budget is your total program costs that include all your programs plus any performances that you're giving or anything related to program costs. I hope that's clear. In addition, first I want to talk about our example. So in the example that we used with the program budget, our funding request was for $4,000 in scholarships. We included the $4,000 in the this request column. So it goes next to the program expense because you're requesting $4,000 in program expense. So if this grant is for capacity building or general operating expenses, you're going to need to identify which category you want to spend your grant request on. For which category are you requesting funding? Just also keep in mind that you can rearrange this budget to reflect what your actual operating budget looks like. I just ask that you keep program as one line item, but you can completely rearrange the administrative and your development and label them however you want and make this budget template work for you so that it is congruent with how you normally do your operating budget. So in this example, we have $100,000 budgeted for salaries and $25,000 budgeted for occupation fee. So those are just example numbers. I'm not sure what else to say about this except that I'm sure you still have questions, so please reach out to us. Okay. As we mentioned before, we are totally fine with indirect cost allocation to program budget. If you do it, please specify your process here. Oh boy, looks like I misspelled budgetary. Sorry about that, guys. So these questions around budgetary shortfalls and scalability are just to find out, in the case if you do not meet your budgets, how do you cut things? How do you cut programs? Is your program scalable? Is it something that can easily be shrunk or expanded? In the amazing case that you are able to expand due to surplus, which is usually not the case, we understand. So we're curious if you have a process in place. Do you have decision matrix? Does your board make these choices? Just really interested to know how you handle shortfalls. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about sustainability. Because we are in the finances section, obviously we are talking about financial sustainability, but believe it or not, that means different things to different organizations. Some people define financial sustainability as an organization that completely operates independently of outside contributions. Of course, that is not the reality for most nonprofits. They are dependent on outside funding, whether that be government grants or individual contributions, or what have you. So, we're interested to know what your definition of sustainability is and whether or not you consider yourself to be financially sustainable. Please be specific in your answer and let us know what you think. Financial challenges, again, we're just looking for honest answers about what your primary financial challenges are. And our goal with all these challenges, questions, is to just find out how we can be better partners and more effective funders, either now or in the future. Okay, so not only am I interested in the numbers on your previous budgets and your current budget, but also the percentages of what different categories represent. So, as you can see, we have a very just basic budget template put in there for you because we're just looking for big categories, really. But so for grants, individual contributions, program fees, and other, if you have an other, oh, it looks like we added events too. Just put in the percentage of your total income that each of those represents, please. If you do have an other income category, would you please identify what that is and put the percentage? So income is 100% because that's your total income. And then on the expenses section, the bottom section, in expenses obviously is 100% as well, but I just have it as the three broad categories, which is admin, program, and development, which again might not be how yours is set up. If you have others, you can identify other and put in that percentage. Or you can add an additional cell and identify another other and put that percentage in. If you have questions with this, ask us, but again, we're just looking for percentages breakdown rather than numbers with this chart. Okay, changes in income or expenses. What we're looking for here are any significant changes in either income or expenses in any one category of either of those. We are defining a significant change as any increase or decrease of 10% or more in any one category, either from last fiscal year to the current fiscal year, or any significant projections you have for the next fiscal year and either the program budget or your operating budget. We are just looking to see what you are experiencing in your finances. And if you do have any significant changes in any category, please identify the category and then give us your best explanation as to why that change occurred. Welcome to my favorite part of the grant, evaluation. Here we want to know, are you accomplishing your mission? And how do you know you're accomplishing your mission? So the reality is that most nonprofits don't engage in any evaluation strategies because they either don't know how to or they don't have the resources, meaning staff or time, to do evaluation. Evaluation does not have to be super hard. There are lots of tricks, so I bet you might even be doing some, but you don't even know it. I knew one organization that wanted to measure joy, so they literally went in and counted the smiles on all their students' faces every day. So it can be something as easy as that. So if by chance you do any evaluation, check any of the boxes that you see there if you do any of those. If you don't, please describe anything that you do as sort of weird or bizarre or not important that you think it is. Tell us any evaluation tools that you do and what you use it for. So generally in businesses, obviously in nonprofits, but in business as well, anything that gets measured is what's valued. So we would like to know if you are actually measuring anything, and if so, what indicator are you using to measure that? So in our example, we want to measure demand for a program, and so the indicator that they're using is number of students. And the second example is you want to measure marketing success. So the indicator they're using is number of donors. So please indicate anything you're measuring and how you are measuring that. For me, this might be the most important question on the entire grant. Are you accomplishing your mission, and how do you know you're accomplishing your mission? What evidence do you have that you are accomplishing your mission? What indicators are you using to measure mission accomplishment? Are you evaluating mission accomplishment over time? If you are measuring your mission accomplishment, please let us know in some detail how you're doing this and what you learn. Also, please note that not all evidence has to be quantitative data. You can have qualitative evidence as well, like success stories, but the idea is to measure how many success stories you have. If you do a satisfaction survey, how many people are answering satisfied or highly satisfied. Measuring equitable access to music. As it was indicated earlier in the grant, it is up to you to define what an underserved population group is, but you will be required, if you receive funding from us, to be able to measure how you are increasing equitable access to music. If you are doing so now, please let us know, and if you have a plan to do so in the future, please let us know. As was noted earlier in the grant when we were discussing the logic model, outcomes are changes in behavior and or decision making. Please note at least 2 outcomes that you have accomplished in the past year. They can be programmatic as well as organizational outcomes. Here we're looking to get an idea of how you use evaluation in your decision making, or even if you do use evaluation in your decision making at all. If you have an example of when you used the results of an evaluation to make a program decision or an organizational decision, please describe the event and let us know how evaluation played into that decision-making process. And we are back to the challenges question. But you know what that means. That means that we are close to the end of this section. Yay! So we're just looking for what your evaluation challenges are in the hopes of discovering how funding either now or in the future could help you in this area and help you become a more monitoring and evaluative organization to help you make better decisions. This is our last slide and our last section. Storytelling. This is where you get to tell us every reason why we should fund you, and tell us anything that we left out of the grant that you think we should know. This is really your time to just brag, brag, brag. So go for it. Thank you so much for filling out our grant and participating with us, and hopefully we will be long-time partners and have a very wonderful, long-standing relationship. Thank you.